Oh.
Earlier today, Paul, in a group text that includes Craig, me, and Garrett at times, and some of those too, sent the note out that Jack Swarbrick, Notre Dame AD, will leave in 2024. NBC Sports Chairman Pete Bevacqua has been named Special Assistant to the President for Athletics and eventually will take over when Swarbrick is gone from that role. We're joined by Mike Frank, Irish Sports Daily, on exactly what this means. Mike, was this something people could see coming?
I don't know if anybody really saw it coming as far as this quickly, but I think that a lot of people felt that Swarbrick was kind of at the end of his road with Notre Dame. And when you look at the situation, Father John, I know, who's the president of Notre Dame, also has, his contract will be up soon. And some people speculate as to whether he'll continue on as the president. So it's almost like they're kind of getting their ducks in a row for both of these guys to bounce out and get the new guys in. I think it's a little bit surprising in that they quickly just kind of put a guy in place. Normally you'd see some research and all that type of stuff before they do that. But I don't know. Obviously, they feel very, very highly about Pete Bevacqua, and obviously he's had a lot of success with NBC. There's already a relationship there. So it makes sense in a lot of ways, but I think a lot of people were a little bit surprised that it came this quickly, but I think most people felt within a couple of years his time was probably done at Notre Dame.
Mike, about a month ago, we got reports that Notre Dame was expecting upwards of $75 million a year in their next TV deal. And I would think this goes a long way to hitting that number when you hire the guy with your television partner who knows exactly how much money they have and where they spend it.
Well, I think that's you have to wonder if that's what's going on here. And it's been kind of up in the air as far as what Notre Dame will do with their TV deal because, as has been mentioned, it's up after this year. And so trying to figure out who the partner is and that type of thing. And I know that there's been lots of talks and things like that. But seeing this kind of line up, you just almost have to wonder if there's already some sort of agreement or it was leaning in that way. And, this was a nice, smooth transition between the two. We haven't heard that that's the case, but it just seems kind of strange that this whole thing just kind of lined up the way it did.
Mike, do you see this? I saw just a couple of, I guess the comments in reaction to the headlines and things of that nature. Does this indicate that perhaps big change is on the horizon with Notre Dame? I'm sure you've been asked a million times about conferences and Notre Dame and would they ever join one and all that. Does this move in any way, move the needle in I guess, shining a light on that potential future of them remaining as is or one day, fulfilling that dream so many people seem to have of seeing them join a conference?
I've been one to say that I really think that they'll end up in a conference at some point. I think it's inevitable just based off the way things are. To be honest, I think they'd probably be in a conference had they not had the situation with the ACC and their contract there. So they're just losing too much money as far as compared to the SEC and the Big Ten deals. When you look at the ad rev, the TV rights and all that type of stuff. So I would be surprised if they weren't in a conference at some point. It's all going to depend on what happens with the ACC and will that blow up. And it's interesting that the power brokers in that conference seem to be pushing for that thing to implode. And if nothing else, to get a larger stake in what is coming through as far as the money goes. So it will be interesting. Swarbrick was a guy who negotiated the deal with the ACC. And because of the independence, I think that was the big driving factor. But sometimes you sit back and you look, I think at the time it looked like a really good deal, but this deal now has kind of put Notre Dame in a bad situation in that, they can't go to the Big Ten if the Big Ten wants them. They can't go to the SEC if the SEC wants them. They're just kind of stuck in limbo with this ACC contract. It made sense at the time when he made this decision, he and Father John, it allowed them to remain independent. And I know a lot of Irish fans, that is, something that they value. Me personally, I don't see a whole lot of value in it other than, for recruiting purposes. But the way things have gone lately with recruiting, I think all that is changing as well. So with the portal and NIL and all the craziness that's going on, it really has become a different way of recruiting here in the last couple of years. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I would be surprised if Notre Dame isn't in some sort of conference within 5 years. And that's, of course, provided that the ACC blows up. And I feel that the money is going to be the difference in money between what the Big Ten and the SEC gets versus what the ACC will get will be so drastic that people are going to push that as far as they can to see if they can get that to implode.
Mike, I've always thought, and I think a lot of others have said this too, but that they remain independent until they can't. That it's a great thing to be. Not many schools, a handful, maybe, are good enough, strong enough, have a large enough base to be independent, but they are. And until the college football playoff basically forces their hand. Do you think that's true too?
I think that's the plan. That's certainly what they want to do. And, they hope their hand is never forced, period. And really, if the playoff expands to 12 teams, as long as Notre Dame is involved in the discussion of that and they carve a space out for them being one of the 12 teams, they may not have to move at all. And I know a lot of Irish fans would prefer that. And I think that makes sense in some regards as well. But really, when you think of the independent, it really is only one sport. It's football. Mm-hmm. Everything else is an ACC. So really, what is the difference other than some sort of bragging rights thing? There really is no big difference between it. I just think that Irish fans like to be able to say that, well, we're an independent school, but really they're not. They're only independent in football.
Would this move, though, by hiring the NBC sports president when you've got your media rights deal, would this be I wouldn't say the last-ditch effort, but a strong effort to make sure you stay independent? Because if you can get them $75 million a year, the gap is pretty much closed.
Yeah, it depends on what the number is. And again, I think that this is some maneuvering that Notre Dame is doing. And I'm sure NBC was worried that when you look at what's going on with Fox and ABC and ESPN and Amazon, a lot of people think we'll get in the game and all these different outlets. It's going to be a situation where it could be pretty competitive. And so my guess is they've been partners together for quite some time, and they just look for a way to make this happen and make it smooth. And when Father John and Jack Swarbrick, they want to leave the situation better than they found it. I think right now, if they left today, both of them could proudly say that they left the situation better than they found it. And I think that that's really what they're trying to do here. Is neither one of them, I don't think, will be along for a while. We know Jack is certainly not. And I think they're just trying to, I guess, create their own legacy and make sure that it's a positive one. And so I would expect that, we have the athletic apparel that's also up right now. So there's a lot of irons in the fire that they have to get ironed out. And my guess is they want to get all that done before the next president and obviously Pete come in and take over as AD.
I almost actually mentioned Notre Dame as a conference, which, again, I know they're a part of other conferences except independent in football. But we've seen now this push for those who have been a part of media, those who have been a part of networks in some ways. Yormark was a very unique hire. What Kleofkoff came from, and now what others. Do you think that was important then, that connection to what Bevacqua has been doing?
I think so. Yeah, it's hard to get into their heads. I know that there's some very bright people. I know that this is something that has been discussed for quite some time. What is the plan? How are we going to do this? And obviously these plans are 10, 15-year commitments sometimes. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure that you're making smart decisions. And so I know this is something that's been kicked around for quite some time. And the full extent of it, what it'll all be when it's all said and done, I don't have a clue. But I do think that they have been very, proactive in trying to set all of this up. So it's a smooth transition, and we'll have to see. But obviously, Pete is a alum of Notre Dame, and I think that certainly helps. They want somebody who understands what Notre Dame's about. He played football. He was a walk-on punter under Lou Holtz, and so he kind of knows that whole situation. And I think it's a good hire in that regard. And we'll just have to see. You just never know when these hires happen, how all this is going to unfold.
Is Notre Dame a place that will, especially for that job, stay? I don't want to say in-house, but like alums are important for, because Swarbrick's obviously an alum as well.
I think it is, in that it's such a unique place, and it's not unique in that it's anything. I'm not saying that it's special or anything like that. What I'm saying is you have to understand that kind of the inner workings of how it all works, and it is such a different process than just your standard university. You have the priests that take a very large role in how all this unfolds, and they have a large say on everything. And then you're also dealing with the board of trustees, and so there are a lot of people who have opinions on this. And then you have the academic side, and that's a bigger problem than people realize, because the academic side says, why are you spending so much money on football? You should be, spending it more on the academic side. We're a higher education institution. We're not a football factory. So there's a whole lot of politics that are involved. And, somebody coming from Ball State, nothing against Ball State or whoever their athletic director is, it would be a completely different situation. And just the politics of it and understanding who greases the wheels at various situations, I think it's advantageous if you've been around and you kind of understand that.
Mike, one more thing. Football, of course, around the corner with their coach and what he did the first year. It didn't get off to a great start with Freeman, but just the expectations as they move into year two with him, with Marcus Freeman.
Well, I think a lot of people anticipated a little bit of a downfall. I mean, it's the first time he's ever been a head coach, and there are things that you're going to have to learn. And you can read stuff in a book. You can talk to people on the phone, but until you're actually in it and amongst it and trying to figure out how to balance, and so many people are pulling you in so many different ways. I think he's kind of learned and has learned from some mistakes. I liked how he's bounced back. He's had some, really kind of humiliating defeats, once against Marshall and another against a bad Stanford team, and was able to get the team to bounce back. They played in the bowl, weren't playing very well. He came in and talked to them at halftime. They came out and played much better and won the bowl game. So to me, I think that is really the making of what is a great coach. And that is, can you fix problems when things are going wrong? And can you steady the ship? I think that's 80-85% of being able to last as a head coach is, can you overcome the valleys? And a lot of coaches can't do that. And there's been a lot of evidence to suggest he can. I think he's out of central casting as far as what you want as a person and as a leader. I know that the fans are really behind him far, far more than they ever were Brian Kelly. A lot of fans just didn't think Brian Kelly was very sincere, and they do feel that Marcus is. Marcus does a really good job with recruiting. He's trying to fix a lot of things that they've had problems, and it just takes time when you do it. And again, going back to they have their football building is almost 20 years old, and so they need to get some advancement on that. A lot of people thought that this would be done by now. It's still not done, and so it's just a tough situation at Notre Dame where if you're at Texas or you're at Texas A&M and you need something done, you make a few phone calls and it gets done pretty quick. That just doesn't happen in Notre Dame like a lot of people think it should or does.
Mike, appreciate it. Appreciate the insight, the knowledge, and also the coverage of today. The story with Swarbrick moving on, Bevacqua taking over in 2024, and also being on the Notre Dame administrative staff, very much so. Thanks for your time, Mike Frank, who's also teamed with Christian McCollum on the Irish Daily, Sports Daily. We appreciate their time. Coming up next, Mickey Spagnola. Cowboys have had